We set it up in 2006. The key feature of the centre was to bring together academics and senior practitioners working in organisations, or policymakers for that matter, to use the research as a way to identify these issues, find the evidence, but also find, more importantly, solutions together to achieve, to increase equality in the workplace. Well, what I can say is it's a very interesting environment in the UK, because also has a legal system which is different, for example, for some of the approaches on other in other European countries. But in terms of equality, actually, I would say that UK is quite advanced. It's got a very robust legislative framework, although a lot of that legislative frameworks come from the European Union. So as the country has decided to leave the European Union, is very much watch this space and see what will happen. But the UK is also being, what I find fascinating about people in this country is they're pragmatists. So there is a lot that has been implemented, a lot has been done in the workplace. But of course, like any countries also, there are a lot of issues, especially as it's a multicultural country as well. So the equality challenges are many more than perhaps countries who are much more homogeneous. For example, one of the strands of work that we do here, a colleague of mine in particular is an expert on religion or belief, how you accommodate religious differences in the workplace, which is really particularly important and quite a sensitive issue. How can we respect each other, understand, etc. But equally, there are some issues relating to gender equality, to women. The participation of women in the labour market has increased significantly over the decades. In the UK is quite high, but as you know, when we look at women in leadership roles, decision-making positions is very low. So there is some progress, there are a lot of things that other countries could learn from, but there are also a lot of quite deep-rooted challenges that needs to be tackled. That piece of research was sponsored by KPMG and the 30% Club, and it's all started from one of the Lord Davies' recommendations in his report that is issued back in 2011, where he suggested that in order to increase women representation on company boards, companies should look at senior women from other sectors, not just the corporate sector. So what I was interested to do was to find out to what extent has that recommendation been followed and how professionally diverse these boards are. And being an academic, I was particularly intrigued because Lord Davies specifically mentioned academia in his recommendation. I was particularly intrigued to find out whether it had been followed up at all. And what I found that UK company boards are very homogeneous overall. There are not very few academics. In fact, I think 8 in the FTSE 100 altogether. Whether they're men or women, so there's not so much a gender issue, but it's more an issue of the fact that the two sectors perhaps don't quite understand how they can gain from one another. And it's quite a striking difference from the United States, where instead I found it is much more common to have academics on company boards. So I think that piece of research, what I'm hoping will focus on is not only about the importance of having greater professional diversities on these boards, which have a lot of influence on society, but through the opening up, having cross-sector appointments, that could be a strategy, as Lord Davies quite rightly indicated, to increase gender diversity. I'm concerned that actually we're going backward on that point, and perhaps we're not sufficiently explore the risk of the technology, which on one hand is wonderful, but on the other hand it blurs the boundaries completely between work and life, and what are the consequences of that blurring the boundaries. So I think maybe work-life balance is not quite the right terminology, because it suggests almost a dichotomy between the two. Work and life are very much, work is part of life, in fact, and they're very much part of an individual identity, personality. So maybe we should be focusing more on sustainability of our working life, because if we spend too much time at work, then that is bound to have a negative effect on our relationship with families, friends, what we can contribute also to society more at large. Absolutely. That is another big challenge, and is part also of the sustainability of the working life, because as you know, we're all living longer, and as a result of that, all governments, European countries are trying to encourage people to extend their working lives. Individuals, the quality of life has also improved, and individuals, as you say, some enjoy their work and want to continue to do their work. But even more so, the issue about sustainability, because if we're going to work for longer, we need to think very carefully about the balance between the paid work and other aspects of our life, because it's a much longer, prolonged period of time. It's a little bit, I like to use the comparison with environment. In the same way, we need to think about preserving the environment. We need to think of ourselves in that very same way, I think. And also, as we prolong our working life, think about more professional diversity, because the chances are that people will want to maybe change career, retrain themselves. And once again, like any equality challenge, we need to make sure that we don't treat individuals as a homogeneous group. One thing is, for me, I've got a very interesting and a very privileged person who will possibly in a position to decide when I want to retire. But there might be people who are doing jobs who are not very attractive, and therefore, they aspire at one point to have to retire. So we need to be mindful of all these differences, and how do we empower people to make what is the best decision for them. We working closely, even more closely, with organisation, businesses, now they're called non-academic research users. Certainly that is a key feature of the centre, has been and will continue to be. In terms of the different areas, the centre somehow has developed organically. If I go back to 2006, we were working mainly in the area of gender, then we moved to age. As the equality challenges change, we resolve some issue, but then we understand, our understanding of equality issue improves, we identify new challenges. I think the centre will continue to try to follow some of these debates. And in the short term, I'm seeing that, for example, there is a big debate about social mobility and how is the workplace. The workplace it's absolutely a key actor, is essential in terms of helping people to improve their social mobility. So how could the workplace better help in that respect? And of course, in the short term, there is a Brexit question mark. As I said before, we talked about age discrimination, and discrimination was legislation that was introduced in the UK in 2006 in response to a European directive. So people are not, that means that people cannot be discriminated on the grounds of age in the workplace. What will hopefully will continue to have that legislation, as indeed many other equality legislations, but what will happen once we are no longer anchored to those, who knows. And I think it's important to make people aware that we should keep the good things